Discrimination is not that she's a woman, so she's going to think differently, she's going to act differently. Answer is no. I dress differently, that's all about it. I don't think any differently than any of the people sitting here, men or women. For me, they are all equal. And with these words, I can only say that once the discrimination is kept out of our thought processes, and if I was, as I believe, I must have been born, and if I was born in my previous life, then I must have been one like Gargi or Vijika. And I want to talk about Gargi. I'm sure all of you are aware that, sit down, brother, talk to me. Either you convince me or get convinced with what I have to offer you. And let's have an argument on whatever subject you wish to. Vijika, I want to share the story of Vijika. Vijika was actually a poetess and from down south, southern part of the country. And complexion-wise, she could have been a little dusky complexion. So in her poem in Sanskrit, she says, because she was a poetess, she says that, who says Sharda or Saraswati was white? Here I am. I am the incarnation of Saraswati, and I am not white. I'm not fair in that in the sense of complexion. So appearances don't really matter. And she goes further, and she says, when it comes to respecting men as poets, I only respect Balmiki, who was born out of an anthill, Vyas, who was born out of on the beach, sea, and rest of them, I will not even put my left foot thumb on their head. So that kind of intellectual arrogance is what was permitted in my society. So much for academics, and so much for argumentative conduct, so much for accepting women at the helm of affair for who they are, academically, intellectually, and not really commodifying the woman's body. And it is here that I say, once culturally we have achieved so much, from there to where have we brought ourselves to? That women are going to escort people, I'm sorry. Or are going to apply tilak, I'm sorry. And if we keep giving examples of Rani Lakshmibai, Maharani Holkar, and each part of our country, Chinnamma, so on and so forth. I mean, each part, each state can identify with the woman, and that too till late medieval past. We have had women warriors in this country. We've had women rulers in this country. We've had a tradition of women rishis in this country. Now, from that tradition to what we have reduced ourselves to. And nobody becomes a warrior overnight, you know. Today, British are going to attack, so I'm going to tie my son at my back, ride a horse, and carry a sword. You can't ride a horse unless you're trained for that. You can't hold a sword unless there is years of practice behind that. You can't fight men unless you're trained to fight men. Physically, there is a body mass ratio which is different. So this society permitted women to do all this. So these women became fighters by fighting on the streets, and that too in late medieval, early modern India, when we were slaves to British Empire. This is my culture. And what have we done post-independence? Where have we brought ourselves to? So I think the entire constitutional mandate, entire social setup, the degradation of values, the degradation of ethos, which is resoundingly anti-women today, and a mindset which is prevailing that keep them out of the workspaces. If there is a case of sexual harassment at a workplace, instead of dealing with the matter, we will not keep in turns. I don't think it speaks very well of our legal system. And we must all give women the opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder, and sometimes elbow men too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Meenakshi ji, I have one question from you. That
we don't have any privacy law, right to privacy law as such. As we have Jim in US, I think it's not there in place.
No, you're not right, because right to privacy is very much part of the right to life, and which is governed by 21, Article 21
No,
of the Constitution.
Meenakshi, it's not the question that I have not put up a right question to you. It might be, it's a constitutional right. But as such, the right, you rightly pointed out that everyone has a right to privacy. And it has not been defined what can be disclosed by the third party, who can approach, and whatever the person can say, and is in a disclosed in a public domain. Under the Article 21 is a constitutional right, what we are talking. But as such, my question is whether, as a person, myself, anybody can uh, access my personal information or not, or what other person can disclose about my personal information. So we can, as a bar, we would like to have your thought, and we should have this kind of a law where we can put a restrictions, and people can be prosecuted for not respecting the other person's privacy.
You see, we are all lawyers, and we all know there are several judgments of the Supreme Court, whether it's telecommunication matter and Telegraph Act, and Telegraph Act also from a very, very long time. We've got these judgments, and those judgments you'll know all very well that under the Constitution, that is the law of the country. And if you say that Article 21, which is which is basically right to life and fundamental right, if that is the law, I think no right can be above that right. So if a constitutionally guaranteed right is being violated, then it's a case of writ jurisdiction which is being which can revalidate the whole thing, and nobody else has the right. And Telegraph Act, several other enactments cover all that, and Right to Information Act also takes care of what is a private information and what cannot be disclosed and what can be disclosed. So areas of personal information need not come into the public purview, and then also taking an assent from the third party seeking some information, then the person whose information is being sought, the consent of that person also comes into play. So I think we have a very workable system, though it may be, you may be right in saying that we don't have a special enactment on this, but so far as the right to privacy is concerned, it's a very well recognized right under the Constitution.
Ma'am, that was one passionate speech. Let's put a huge round of applause to the two passionate
Thank you very
speeches
much.
we've had from the lady and the gentleman on the dais. Without any further ado, Mr. Jethmalani himself. Let's keep clapping until he reaches the mic.
Thank you. The charming sharer this evening of this stage, charming ladies and slightly less charming gentlemen. I'm very happy that I see a lot of young faces here, and I owe them a debt of gratitude. Frankly, I always tell my audiences that I'm now sitting in the departure lounge of an airport, waiting for the flight to be called. But the flight has been delayed. I believe it has been delayed because of the good wishes of the young. And it is my last ambition in life to repay the debt which I owe to them. Let me explain to you the origin of this date. My Prime Minister, I have been a minister for a short while, and I therefore had a Prime Minister for an equally short time. He used to ask me, he's younger than me, much younger than me, but he used to ask me, he said, Ram, how is it that you do at your age the things which you keep doing? Please don't ask me what things he was referring to. That's a matter of privacy. And you have just been advised to respect it. So very many times I avoided answering that question. But when he persisted for an answer, I one day told him, I said, Atalji, you today evening, come and have a drink with me. Now, please don't take the impression Atalji rarely drinks, and he drinks very little, but after great persuasion. So he came. So we had quite a convivial meeting sitting in my house. And then I told him, I said, Atalji, you have been very anxious to know about how I do these kind of things. He says, I said, Atalji, you know, you have been a great orator, you attract such vast crowds, and you hold people spellbound. But there's something defective about you that you don't know anything about world history. Oh, he said, come on now, tell me, what is there in history that I don't know? I said, have you heard of King Solomon? He said, yes, I have heard of King Solomon. I said, King Solomon, Atalji, has left a prescription for eternal youth. So I looked at him, he looked at me for a while, and I said, Atalji, you have a dirty mind. He was very familiar, younger than me, as I told you. He has not left a drug or a narcotic or the kind of material that has now become very familiar with even our young people. I said, but he has left a lesson. Oh, he says, what lesson has he left? I said, the lesson that he has left is that the older you get, the younger should be your company. So again he looked at me and I looked at him, as I tell you, again you are dirty mind. I know what you are thinking. I said, I follow the teaching of Solomon vigorously, religiously almost, and that is why I go to the colleges to teach. That gives me the company of the young. And whenever I go and speak to my young friends, I come home a little younger than I was when I started. So it is you who have kept this flight delayed for me, and I am eternally grateful. But ladies and gentlemen, this charming lady today talked about women. I must confess that I love women and I'm a slave of women. But ladies and gentlemen, the women don't like it. They want me to be a slave of one woman, which I am not. However, taking that theme a little further, let me tell you that the history of the world shows that woman has always been superior to man. Man was a hunter. Went out hunting, he killed, he ate, he fornicated on the spot, never returned home. And while man remained a hunter, no civilization was possible in the world. It is the woman back home who built the first modest cottage. It is the woman back home who tilled the first field. And ladies and gentlemen, that was the beginning of the world's civilization. Then she started domesticating animals. Then she started domesticating wild animals. And man was the last wild animal that she domesticated. That makes woman superior. She talked to you about women goddesses. But though in India some people worship one god, there are many who worship many gods, there are ones who worship million gods.
Or none.
But, ladies and gentlemen, the history of India, if probed further, shows that at one time there was no male in the Hindu pantheon. The Hindu pantheon had only 12 female goddesses. But then, as man's influence and evil influence, that wild animal became wild again. As his influence grew, he got every goddess married. Slowly, the poor goddess disappeared. And the male goddess became prominent. And if you ask me, the only goddess which has retained our sovereignty in India is goddess Durga Kali, who is worshipped in Bengal. If women have to be empowered, I appeal to women to produce more Kalis and Durgas. And that's the only way that you will again re-domesticate this wild animal called man. Well, you talked of many famous women in the country. We have always had the great example of Indira Gandhi, who became our Prime Minister. Her father used to address her as Priyadarshini. But I have my different opinions. I was a practicing lawyer and the chairman of the Bar Council of India at that time.